Good evening, family. This is Dr. Kia Pruitt, and it is Friday, July 22nd, 2022, and the time is 5:30 p.m. So I hope you all had a wonderful week and a glorious day. I hope you all are getting ready for dinner, and I know that it is dinner time, so I will be brief. I just wanted to say that there were a couple things that came to mind as I was having conversations with some of my friends and family members on yesterday and today. And I thought I'd come on here and just share my thoughts. Now, I know that we all are getting ready to see what's going to happen with number 46 being sick, and we're all preparing and gearing up for midterms and for what usually happens in November. Hopefully, it will be a lawful, legal process that we witness. But we all know that during this time, the left or those on the other side of the fence have a tendency to stage certain things, and it never goes without fail. It happens almost all the time. And one of the most recent things that I can think of that happened, and I'm thinking about it now because one of my friends did a broadcast on it yesterday, and I can understand why. But I think it was about something that happened not long ago in Uvalde, Texas. You all know what happened there, right? And I think it's a very sad occasion. I think it's troubling. But I always try to look at what they're trying to communicate when they do something like this. Now, we know that sometimes there are false flag events. We know that sometimes they have crisis actors. Some of us have seen the interviews where the so-called or alleged parents couldn't even remember some of the victims' names, and these victims were allegedly their children. They couldn't remember the names or the ages. And that was a little suspect, but hey, people, when they're in crisis and when they're mourning, sometimes their memory escapes them or it eludes them. So it's not my place to say if it was true or not. But what I do want to submit to you is that these type of things that happen in Uvalde, Texas, and that happen all across America during what happens in November, it occurs all the time, and you see a divide between people, and in terms of political parties, you see a divide in the families, and it really raises a red flag. Okay, but yesterday when I was listening to this broadcast or this podcast, I asked my friend, had he considered that when you do the gematria of value of Uvalde, it comes up first American president, or first female president of America. So why is it that, among other things, you have different coded messages that come up when you do gematria values for certain words, but why was one of them first female president of America? So what I thought about is this was predictive programming, and they were sending messages to each other to let each other know what they had intended. And it's interesting that shortly thereafter, 46 came up sick with the C word, the C word that has to do with the common cold, that one, and the C word that has to deal with people needing chemotherapy. So one day he said he had that sickness that required chemotherapy, and then the next day it came up that he had the C word that required him to be isolated, and they said that he would be fulfilling his duties in the big house, and that he would still be communicating with those that work with him. So I just want to encourage you to look into these things, so perhaps their plan is or was to usher in a female. I heard somebody else say that was going to happen. I can't remember the gentleman's name from AMTV. He's saying they're going to usher in a female. But my thoughts are that the white hats are in control. Now, we discussed yesterday on my video that the VP is not legitimate, and she may not serve in that capacity as the commander-in-chief. And I highlighted why. I talked about the difference between a natural born and a native born citizen. Again, to recap, natural born means that you were born on the continent, but one or both of your parents are natural Americans, or they had to have been naturalized at the time of your birth, because it's not just about location or proximity when it comes to serving as commander-in-chief, but it's also about allegiance. Now, being born on the continent as she was in California, you are considered native born. But a natural born American would be somebody who was not only born on this continent, but one of their parents had to have been from this continent or naturalized at the time of birth, because that would solidify your parents' allegiance. So if you are an anchor baby, meaning that you were born here at the time of your parents not being lawful citizens, but maybe they're just being students, but they weren't naturalized and they're not naturally from this continent, then you are only an anchor baby. You are native born, but not natural born. And the Constitution for the United States of America explicitly says that in order to serve in the capacity as the commander-in-chief, you have to be natural born. And it talks about other things as well, but that's important because our forefathers wanted to ensure that whoever stepped into that position would have the best interest of the American people at heart. So if your parents, like number 44 and like the VP, were born in another country or have an allegiance to another country, then by proxy, this child has an allegiance to the parents' country. So in regards to the VP, now that we have the female VP, her father is Jamaican, her mother is Asian, so that, or from India, so that would mean her allegiance is to her father's country in patriarchal societies, or as in most countries and most societies, they say you are what your mother is. So either way, she would either have an allegiance to India or to Jamaica. And in terms of having allegiance to India, by proxy, one could surmise that you may have an allegiance to the CCP. Regardless of which parent she has an allegiance to, or to which of their countries she has an allegiance, she is not constitutionally able to serve in that capacity. So we know that even though their plan may have been to usher her in, it could not work. At some point, the White Hats will have to dismantle that because she's not constitutionally able. So you need to talk to a constitutional attorney to come to that understanding or understanding or overstanding and realize that the Constitution for the United States made this provision so that we, the American people, can be safe. And that was something that was very smart on their behalf. So this is why we have to be governed by the law of the land, because it has we the people and our best interests at heart. So now then some say maybe the Speaker of the House could be ushered in. And I say that's true, except that she's probably not really alive, that we may see doubles, doppelgangers operating in her stead, body doubles, clones, whatever you call it, people wearing masks, actors or actresses. So even if they tried to usher that in, it could not last long because we're too smart here. We all know that it's a fake and a fraud. We here on this channel, we are familiar with Castle Rock and how they stage things out of California in the entertainment industry to make things look real. We know about green screens. We've seen 46 speak and his hand go through the microphone, and we've seen the green color from the green screens. We're intelligent. We're smart. We are not dumb, right? So they cannot pull the wool over our eyes any longer. So my point is, be encouraged, understand, understand, and overstand that they do certain things for predictive programming, and also to send coded messages to each other to let each other know that the time has come to put certain things in place. So again, Uvalde, when you look at the gematria value, it says first female president of America. But that won't be allowed to happen. So I applaud people who, really know that 46's sickness is probably a way for them to eliminate him and get him out of there, because we've been saying for the longest time he's not competent, he's not able really to serve, and we all know who really is in charge, right? We all know that he never conceded, and we all know about what happened last year in November. So we're smart, we're intelligent. Our hopes are caught up in what the Creator has for us and not on what the adversary has for us. And this hope and encouragement and intelligence brings me to another topic, and that is I'm coming into a lot of circles where people are starting to become very discouraged because it's taken so long for number 45 to be ushered back in, and because they see what's going on in the economy, they see that the housing market is crashing, they see that the stock market has ebbs and flows and it's volatile, they're concerned about their digital assets, and they don't know which way to go. And I'm almost running into it as if we're new to this game. And so I don't know if it's, maybe I'm running into new people, or the old people that's been in this war for a long time are just getting tired. So I want to encourage you all today, okay, to think beyond what you see with your eyes. And if you need some encouragement and you need your spirits uplifted, look at my video on yesterday, because Mama Kia went in, honey. I mean, I preached a whole sermon. I sweated. I had to stop and get me some water. I needed some ushers to come and fan me, even though there were no ushers around. I mean, we went in. I mean, I revved up, I hooped, I hollered. I mean, I almost practically broke into a Holy Ghost dance because I encouraged my soul just talking about how the Creator has our best interests in mind, and how our Creator, the Galactic Federation, and the people working behind the scenes are ushering in the new era. So remember, when they talked about CORONA, it looked like it was an illness, but it's really a banking term that has to do with gold. And they were talking about to themselves that we were entering into a golden era, not just we were going into the gold standard. Now remember, yesterday I told you that Project Sandman was about 100 plus countries agreeing behind the scenes to return to the gold standard, to drop the USD and return to the gold standard. That's what Project Sandman is about. And we see it happening before our eyes. We heard that 209 countries had agreed, but we didn't see the evidence. Now, family and friends, sometimes you have to believe in order to see, or sometimes you have to know, and knowing is seeing. Some people say I have to see in order to know, or see in order to believe, but sometimes you just have to know it in your soul and in your spirit, and then do your due diligence to research and prove that what you see in your spirit and with your spiritual eyes is correct. So my sisters and my brothers, my friends, my family, my lurkers and listeners and ear hustlers, please understand and overstand that the CORONA was all about the gold standard being ushered in, and us being ushered into a golden era, an era where we're ascending in consciousness. The CRONA is about the crown. Gold, as in the golden crown, as in your crown chakra, as in rising to Christ consciousness in a golden era, as in lifting your vibrations to ascend in consciousness into higher dimensions. And this is what they were talking about on a spiritual and metaphysical level. And when you have a spiritual eye, you can see this. And you can know this. So be encouraged. This is another coded message that they were sending back and forth. So that even though things were closed down all around us and they shut down things, the good guys were behind the scenes, ushered into the golden era. And here's where we come into play. Where we come into play, my friends, my family, is we have to keep our vibrations high so that no matter what your eyes see, you have eyes to see and ears to hear, but sometimes that means to see beyond the veil, to see on a spiritual, metaphysical level, to hear things that are beyond what people are saying, to understand, and understand codes and coded messages, because that's how the elite operate. And that is actually a good thing that they understand and are able to speak according to numerology, according to astrology, according to symbols, according to those type of things that we used to know because it's our sacred science. So now I find myself encouraging people and running into the people that I'm really hoping to encourage. And while the majority are like, thank you, we're right there with you, we're vibrating on the same frequency, our energies and our vibrations are raised and we're encouraged too, I'm running into some people who feel like they are discouraged and they're saying, no, we're going to have to be poor first. We're going to suffer before it gets better. It's going to get worse. It's going to get bad. You're spreading hopium and this is some lying, some hogwashing. I'm sick of listening to this. And I mean, they've been going in on us, sister. But here's the thing, family. Even if you don't believe in Nasara, even if you don't believe that massive amounts of wealth are going to be flooded into the planet or onto the planet to create humanitarian projects to help us, even if that is not your inclination or your belief system, then my friends, my family members, you are sovereign. You have reign over your lives. You have power. When did we start getting to the point where we do not believe in or have confidence in our own abilities? So if you don't believe that this money is going to be flooded onto the planet, then why don't you stop what you're doing, call up your friends and family members, and practice group economics? Could it be possible that some of you can move in together and share the expenses? Could you pull your resources together? Could you pool your resources and share the mortgage or the rent, the utilities, the cost of living, the gas? Could you pool your resources and carpool and travel together to get to work? Could you hire somebody in the community who doesn't have a job to watch your children instead of taking them to the daycare? Could you bring in your mom or your mother-in-law or mother-in-law and ask her to watch the children so you can go to work? You see, there are things that we can do, but somehow we have allowed the system to dictate to us that we must all take our children, hand them over to the system and to their schools, hand them over to the system and to their daycares, and both parents have to go to work. Both parents have to have 2 cars, 2 cell phones, eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner outside the house. Why have we allowed this to happen? My friends, my family members, pull together your resources. If you don't want to depend on the government to send you or usher in Nasara, then utilize the resources that you have. And yes, that will take setting aside our egos and learning to work together. And I'm hearing people say, that's not possible. I have to have my own space. Both parents have to work. Everybody in the family has to work. Do you? Because you learn how to make a way when everything was closed down and nobody was working. You learn how to educate your children when they forced you to. You learn how to babysit your children when they forced you to. You complained about it. You learn how to worship in your own house when they forced you to, and they forced the churches to close. Even though the pastor said they weren't afraid of Zaddy and they didn't work for Zaddy. I bet you when Zaddy said close those doors, they closed those doors, did they not? And you learn how to call on the Creator for yourself and to dig deep within yourself and pull out a belief system and call on that Creator that's within you, or you learn to call on your higher self and your ancestors for answers. So instead of telling me that this is impossible, you can't do it, you can't wait on the government. You can't think of a way out. Why don't you pull your resources and move in together and help each other? You see, telling me that everybody has to go out and work, and you have to give over your children to daycare, and you have to send them into schools, and then you complain about how the schools educate your children, and then you complain that the police aren't protecting your children, and you want to defund them, and you want to argue and complain, and you want to protest and rally and fight and argue online and say they're not doing their job. I'm not understanding the cognitive dissonance, why you can't take out your children, if that's the problem, and educate them yourselves. It's not making that sense to me. If indeed you're concerned about policy enforcers, teachers. Now, where I'm from, in Louisville, Kentucky, thousands of teachers have retired, resigned, or quit. So that means there aren't enough teachers in the school, and there sure aren't enough substitutes. Same is going on all across the country. What are you going to do? You're going to keep complaining that there's not enough staff there, that they're not educating them the way they want. You're going to keep complaining that the policy enforcers are allowing people to come in and harm your children. You're going to get on social media and claim that this is racism and they don't like your children and they don't do what you want them to do. Or are you going to take responsibility and accountability for your own life and your own children and do something for your family and your community? Now, you can't come to me and tell me that I have too much hope and that you can't do something, that this is not feasible and that people have to work. In some cases they do. Or you can't teach your children when you found a way to do it, when Zaddy told you you had to. You can't. It's hard for me to hear you. When my family, now this is a little disclosure, I was in graduate school, and I was in, at the time my husband and I were split up. We were separated. And his family members, or his sister, which was my sister-in-law, had just graduated with a master's degree. And she was like, we need to do something about our children. We want them to be educated. And so she said, Kia, you're in college. I've been to college. Let's get together with other people in the community. And let's get our family members together, and her husband and my husband, even though we were split up. So that meant we were split up. But she said, let's all come together and educate our children, because you can create your own curriculum. You can buy curriculums. You can glean a curriculum from public schools, from magnet schools, from charter schools. There are all sorts of things you can do. And we started in her basement of her house, a school just for our children. And we pulled together our little money. Mind you, I was only on student loans. We pulled together our resources. We hired a cook among the family. We hired people in the community. We said, we can't pay you this a lot, but we can barter with you. We can provide. If we're giving you a job and we're educating your children, can you teach in return? Or can you do other things in return? Can you drive the van? And we went and rented a cheap van. We pulled together our resources and we taught our children, and then we started applying for grants, and some of us got other jobs outside. We got second jobs. Some people did, I didn't. But we did whatever we had to do to educate our children, and we expanded the school, and it began to grow. And then we moved into the YMCA, the basement of the YMCA. And then other people believed in our vision. They gave us grant money. There's grant money all over the place. There are people that's trying to throw money at you, which is why yesterday or the day before I said create an LLC or a business, and they will give you money. They will give you business credit. They will give you grants, loans, whatever, to do whatever it is you desire to do. And our school expanded outside of the YMCA, and then somebody in our family bought us a building through credit. I think it might have been business credit. And we grew in just a few years. We had a daycare, we had an elementary school, we had a middle school, and a high school. And because I was studying to be a counselor, I became the school counselor, and I taught them English literature as well as how to prepare to work in the workforce. And I did counseling and coaching on our children, my nieces and nephews, and the children in the community. And it expanded, and it was so beautiful. We had all type of races, people from different religious backgrounds in our private school and daycare. And this is why it's such a passion of mine, because I did it and I didn't have money. We didn't have a lot of money, but people believed in our vision. And this is what I'm saying. When you have a vision and you have a plan and you have a hope and you have high vibrations and you see the cup is full rather than empty and you vibrate on a high frequency, then you are able to be proactive and create something for your family members. Yes, I had to put my ego aside and work together with my children's father. Yes, I had to accept certain things from him and he accepted certain things from me. But you know what? We said our children's dreams, our children's well-being is more important than our ego. It's more important than our problems. And we work together as a family to do what's in the best interest of our children and of the children in the community. So my point is, you don't have to wait on Nasara. You can live wealthy now, because working together, practicing group economics is wealth. Why can't you pull together your resources, everybody give $1, and then put it together until you get $30 to buy an ounce of silver? Is that not possible? If you're concerned about the stock market crashing and your retirement accounts not being safe, could you roll over those savings into precious metals, because precious metals maintain their value? So if it's in a crash, if it's in the stock market, if your accounts are in the stock market, you're saving in the stock market, and the stock market crashes, you will lose it. So if I'm telling you this, it could happen, and then you get mad at me and say, yeah, I know it could, and it probably will, and it's going to get bad before it gets better, and you're just pouring out a bunch of hopium, maybe instead of doing that, we can all look for solutions and take our money out of those platforms or mediums, or some of it, and roll it over into precious metals, because precious metals not only maintain their value, but they increase in value. Now, if you went to the US debt clock and you download it and you look at the area that talks about precious metals, and you look at dollar to gold ratio and dollar to silver ratio, then you will see that the correct value right now of silver is actually about, I think, somewhere around $1,500. It's dropped some, $1,500 per ounce, but that's still better than $30 an ounce or $19 an ounce. The true value that they're showing is about $1,500 an ounce, and the true value of gold is $15 an ounce. But right now you can buy an ounce of gold for $1,700. But if you downloaded that US debt clock, you'll see what the true value is. So why can't you exchange something or pull your resources together and purchase or invest in silver and gold, so that when you return to the gold and silver standard, which we already see happening, you will get a nice return on your investment, or roll over your retirement so that you will save your investment and it's protected, because they can't come steal your money, your precious metals. They don't know where it is. You can lock it up in a safe. You can put it in a safe somewhere else. Do you see what I'm saying? There are solutions. Do both of you need to work? Have you actually counted up the cost and done the benefit analysis? What do they call it? Cost benefit analysis? Because if you have to have 2 cars and fill up both cars with gas, and you're both choosing to eat out breakfast, lunch, and maybe even dinner, and you're paying for daycare or somebody to watch your children, and you're paying for all these other things, and you're too tired when you come home to cook, so now you got to go out and eat, and you're spending as much money as you would if one person stayed home and the other person went to work, then maybe there's a way you can survive. Or why not bring in grandma or mommy or mother-in-law or auntie or somebody who needs a job to help you out? Family, there are ways we can get around this. We're going to have to do this because schools are running low on manpower, and even law enforcers. they're low right now, right, on manpower. And what are you going to do when they have to cease and desist? And we have to change and have a new form of protection, because policy enforcers, for the most part, are unlawful. They're just, I don't want to say they're unlawful, but they're right now they're operating as corporate entities. They are operating as a business. And remember, under motu proprio, Pope Francis told them they all must cease and desist, as well as lawyers and judges and the Queen and all those people who were operating underneath him and operating under the United States corporation. So we're going to have to start thinking outside the box, and that takes having an abundance mentality. That takes being positive. It takes looking for solutions. It takes being proactive. It takes beginning with the end in mind. I encourage all my supporters to please read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, written by Stephen Covey, because he's going to teach you how to think from an abundance perspective and how to begin with the end in mind, set a goal, and then I'm telling you, create SMART goals so that you can achieve them. Make sure those goals are specific, measurable, achievable, reachable, and time tested. SMART goals, and then you achieve them. But it's better to do it together than alone. Now, some of us are complaining that, we can't find good men. There are no men. Men don't want to help us, blah, blah, blah. But some of us need to change our mindset and maybe work with the children's father that we have to raise the children that we have. Or work together as a community rather than complain and whine about what men aren't doing, whether to complain and whine about what schools aren't doing, whether complain and whine about what the police aren't doing and need to do, whether complain about the government and how people are lying if they believe in this. Listen, take control over your own life as sovereign beings. Create a plan and think about your posterity, which is your future generations. Let me call to mind Proverbs 13:22. A good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, and the wealth of the wicked is reserved or laid up for the just. So yes, the wealth of the wicked, it has been stored up. Their assets have been frozen through Executive Order 138/18 and other orders. But you have to keep in mind that's going to come back to us, and people are saying, well, you're not going to get things that you haven't put into. You're not going to get anything if you haven't put anything into the system. You all know about your birth certificates. It was turned into a bond and circulated on the stock market. You know that they're trading under your social security numbers. If you look up gmeiutility.org, that's gmiutilities.org, and if you are so inclined, I'm not telling you to do this, to put in your social security number with the dashes, you'll see hundreds of people, if not thousands of people and corporations trading